The doorbell rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, interrupting the peaceful silence of my living room where I was curled up with a book and a cup of tea. I remember the exact time because I glanced at the clock on my wall, annoyed at the interruption during my rare day off from the demanding schedule at Hartford Financial Group. I had no idea that in the next 5 minutes, my entire life would shatter into a million pieces that would take me months to reassemble into something even better than before. I padded to the door in my comfortable weekend clothes, my natural curls pulled back in a loose bun, expecting maybe a delivery or a neighbor needing to borrow something. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when I opened that door. My husband Trevor stood on the porch, but he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman I'd never seen before. She was white, blonde, and very obviously pregnant. At least 6 months along from the size of her belly. She wore a tight dress that emphasized her condition, and her lips were curved into a smirk that made my stomach turn even before I understood what was happening. "Simone," Trevor said, his voice lacking any warmth or guilt. "We need to talk. Can we come in?" I stood frozen, my hands still on the doorknob, my brain trying to process what my eyes were seeing. Trevor looked different somehow. More comfortable. Like he was finally being himself. The woman beside him touched her belly in an exaggerated gesture, her eyes scanning me from head to toe with barely concealed satisfaction. "Who is this?" I finally managed to ask, though some deep part of me already knew the answer. The woman stepped forward, and that's when I saw it. The greedy smirk that would haunt me for weeks afterward. "I'm Brittany," she announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Trevor's girlfriend. Well, his real girlfriend. The mother of his child." She patted her stomach again. My world tilted. 6 months pregnant. 6 months. I counted backward in my mind. December. While I'd been planning our anniversary dinner, excited about surprising Trevor with the expensive watch he'd been wanting. While I'd been working extra hours to help save for the house renovation he kept talking about. While I'd been the devoted wife of 8 years, building our life together. "What is this, Trevor?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but only slightly. "Look, this wasn't how I wanted to do this, but Brittany's right. We need to settle things. We're having a baby, Simone. I'm going to be a father. And we need to divide the assets fairly." "Divide the assets?" I repeated slowly. Brittany's smirk grew wider. "That's right. We're here for our share. This house is half Trevor's and he wants his portion. The savings accounts, the investments, everything. We need it for the baby." She said, "We," like she had any right to be part of this conversation, like she had any claim to the life I'd built. I looked at Trevor, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. "You bring your pregnant mistress to our home? The home I helped buy? And you demand your share?" "It's not like that," Trevor said, but his tone was defensive, not apologetic. "I've been trying to tell you for months that we weren't working. You're always at work, always focused on your career. Brittany understands me. She makes me feel alive. The cliché of it would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my life. Every cheating spouse in history had said the same thing." Brittany moved closer to Trevor, linking her arm through his in a possessive gesture. She was younger than me, maybe 25 to my 35. That detail stung in a way I hadn't expected. "We've already talked to a lawyer," Brittany announced, pulling a manila envelope from her oversized designer purse. A purse I recognized as the same brand Trevor had told me was too expensive when I'd admired it last year. "These are the papers. Trevor deserves half of everything. It's only fair." She thrust the envelope toward me and I took it automatically, my hands moving while my brain was still trying to catch up. Trevor shifted his weight, glancing at Brittany like he was seeking her approval. That's when I knew. This wasn't just an affair. He'd already moved on emotionally. I was just the obstacle in his way, the paperwork that needed to be filed. "I can't believe this," I whispered. "Believe it?" Brittany said, her voice sharp now. "Trevor and I are starting our life together. We need to move on from this." She gestured vaguely at me in the house behind me, like our entire marriage was just this, something inconvenient to be brushed aside. Trevor finally met my eyes. "I'll come by next week to get my things. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Simone. Your choice. But either way, I want what's mine." "What's mine?" The words echoed in my head. The house we'd bought together with money from my signing bonus when I landed my job at Hartford. The savings account I'd been filling with my performance bonuses. The investment portfolio I'd carefully built while he spent his salary on who knows what. Now I knew. He'd been spending it on her. On them. On this secret life. "Get out," I said quietly. You need to read those papers, Brittany insisted, her hand protectively over her belly again. We need an answer by Monday. We've already found a house we want to buy. A real house. Something bigger, better. Somewhere we can raise our family properly. Our family. She said it like they were the legitimate couple and I was the interloper. Like I was the other woman in this scenario. I said get out, I repeated louder this time. Trevor grabbed Brittany's elbow. Let's go. She needs time to process. He said it like he was being generous, giving me time to accept my new reality as his ex-wife who would hand over half of everything I'd worked for. They walked down my porch steps, Brittany's heels clicking loudly on the wood. She looked back once, that smirk still in place like she'd won some prize. Trevor's car was parked in the driveway. The car I'd co-signed for because his credit wasn't good enough on its own. He opened the passenger door for her with a gentleness I couldn't remember him ever showing me in recent years. I watched them drive away, standing in my doorway like a statue, the manila envelope clutched in my hands. The autumn afternoon was beautiful, golden leaves falling from the maple tree in my yard, neighbors mowing lawns and children playing in the distance. Normal Saturday sounds for everyone else. For me, everything had just changed. I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs finally giving out. I slid down to the floor, the envelope falling beside me. My phone was in my pocket. I should call someone. My best friend Roxanne. My mother. My sister. Anyone. But I couldn't move. I just sat there on my hardwood floor in the home I'd loved, and let the truth wash over me. Trevor had been cheating on me for at least 6 months, probably longer. He'd gotten another woman pregnant. And now he wanted to take half of everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, to start his new life with her. The audacity of it was staggering. The cruelty was breathtaking. But underneath the shock and pain, something else was stirring. A cold, clear anger. They came to my door with demands and smirks, expecting me to just roll over and give them what they wanted. They thought I was weak. They thought I was defeated. They thought they'd won. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I picked up the envelope and opened it with shaking hands. Legal documents just like Brittany had said. A petition for divorce. A list of assets to be divided. Bank account numbers, the house address, everything. I scanned through the pages, my financial analyst brain automatically cataloging information even through my emotional haze. That's when I noticed something. The list of assets was incomplete. It was missing several accounts. It was missing information about my employment benefits, my retirement accounts, my investments. Either Trevor didn't know about them, or his lawyer wasn't very good. Or both. A tiny spark of hope flickered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as powerless as they thought. Maybe I could fight back. Maybe I could win. I stood up slowly, wiping my eyes. The tears had started without me noticing, but I brushed them away with determination. I walked to my home office, sat down at my computer, and opened a new document. I titled it Evidence. If Trevor wanted a war, he was going to get one. But he'd underestimated me. They both had. And that was going to be their biggest mistake. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my dining room table with my laptop, a notepad, and every financial document I could find in the house. The shock had worn off, replaced by a focused determination that felt almost foreign. I'd always been the peacekeeper in my marriage, the one who smoothed things over, who compromised. Not anymore. By sunrise, I discovered my husband was a thief. The joint checking account we'd maintained for household expenses showed a pattern I'd somehow missed while I was busy working 60-hour weeks. Regular transfers out, always just under $1,000. Small enough not to trigger alerts, large enough to add up. I pulled up the history for the past year and did the math. Trevor had siphoned off $47,000 from our account. $47,000 of my money, since I'd been the primary contributor. My hands shook as I documented every transaction, taking screenshots, making notes about dates and amounts. December through March showed the heaviest activity. The same months Brittany must have gotten pregnant and they must have been setting up their little love nest. At 6 a.m. I called Roxanne. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy. Simone? What's wrong? It's Sunday morning. I need you, I said simply, and the emotion I'd been holding back finally cracked through. Can you come over? I'm on my way. 20 minutes. She made it in 15. Roxanne had been my best friend since college, a corporate lawyer with a sharp mind and zero tolerance for nonsense. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug that made the tears come again. Tell me everything, she said, guiding me to the couch. So I did. The door opening yesterday afternoon. Brittany's smirk. The pregnancy. The demands. The envelope of legal papers. Roxanne's expression grew darker with each detail. That snake, she hissed when I finished. Both of them. Show me the papers. I handed her the manila envelope. She read through everything with her lawyer eyes, making small noises of disgust. This is amateur work. His lawyer is either incompetent or Trevor lied about your assets. This list is missing at least half of what you should have. I know, I said. I've been documenting everything. Roxanne, he's been stealing from me. Look at this. I showed her my laptop with all the transfers highlighted. Her eyes widened. Simone, this is financial fraud. In a marriage, sure, he had access to the joint account, but given that you were the primary earner and he was systematically draining it without your knowledge for his affair, a judge is going to take a very dim view of this. Can we prove it was for the affair? Let me see his phone records if you have access. Credit cards. Anything. I pulled up our cell phone account online. We were on a family plan under my name, which meant I could see everything. Trevor's number showed hundreds of texts and calls to one number over the past year. I cross-referenced it with the contact information on the divorce papers Brittany had brought. Bingo. It was her number. Got him, Roxanne muttered, taking screenshots with her own phone. What else? I logged into our credit card accounts. Trevor had his own card on my account since his credit score was too low to get approved solo. The charges told a story that made me sick. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. A jewelry store purchase in February for $800. I'd gotten nothing for Valentine's Day this year. He told me money was tight and we should skip gifts. Hotel rooms. Multiple hotel rooms even though we lived in the same city. Furniture deliveries to an address I didn't recognize. Baby store purchases starting in March. He used your credit to buy things for her, Roxanne said, her voice tight with anger. Simone, he's an idiot. This is all evidence. Every single charge. There's more, I said, pulling up another document. I found lease papers in his desk drawer last night. He's been renting an apartment across town for 9 months. Guess whose name is on the lease? His. Both of them. Trevor and Brittany. She's been living there rent-free in an apartment my husband has been paying for with money he stole from our joint account. Roxanne sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. It wasn't a nice smile. Oh, he's done. He's so done. Simone, with this evidence, you're not just going to avoid giving him half. You're going to take him to the cleaners. I want more than that, I said quietly. I want to understand the full scope of his lies. Roxanne, we've been married for 8 years. How did I miss this? Because you trusted him. Because you were busy being a successful, hardworking woman while he was busy being a lying snake. This isn't on you. But it felt like it was on me. How could I have been so blind? I analyzed financial reports for a living, found patterns and numbers that other people missed, advised corporations on million-dollar decisions. Yet I'd missed my own husband's betrayal happening right under my nose. I need to know everything, I said. Can you help me? I'm not a divorce lawyer, but I know the best one in the state. Let me make a call. While Roxanne stepped outside to make her call, I continued my investigation. I pulled up Trevor's social media accounts. We were friends on all platforms, but I realized I hadn't actually looked at his pages in months. Why would I? He was my husband. I trusted him. His profiles told a different story than the one I'd been living. Check-ins at restaurants with Brittany tagged. Photos from last month at a beach resort I'd never heard of. Comments from his friends that suddenly made sickening sense. Great seeing you and the lady. Congrats on the good news. She's glowing. They'd been living a public life together while I was at work, believing my marriage was intact. His friends knew. His family probably knew. Everyone knew except me, the actual wife. I scrolled further back and found the first photo of them together. 8 months ago at a company barbecue. Fun day with the team, his caption read. She was in the background, but the way they were looking at each other was obvious now. I'd probably seen this post when he'd made it, scrolled right past it without registering the truth. Roxanne came back in, her expression triumphant. Janet Morrison will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. She's the best divorce attorney in the state, and when I told her the basics, she cleared her schedule. She wants this case. I can't afford the best attorney in the state, I started to say. You can't afford not to have her. Trust me. Janet works on contingency for cases like this. If she thinks she can get you a favorable settlement, she'll take a percentage. And Simone, with this evidence, she's going to get you everything. I nodded, trying to let that sink in. What do I do until then? Document everything. Don't confront Trevor. Don't let him know you're investigating. Act like you're still in shock, still processing. Let him think he has the upper hand. That won't be hard, I admitted. I am still in shock. Roxanne squeezed my hand. You're also angry. I can see it. Channel that anger into gathering evidence. Be methodical. You're good at this kind of work. Treat it like a case file at your job. She was right. I could do this. I'd spent 10 years building my career on analyzing data, finding discrepancies, uncovering hidden patterns. It was time to use those skills for myself. After Roxanne left, promising to come back that evening with dinner and support, I made a list of everything I needed to investigate. Trevor's work situation. Where was his salary really going? The apartment lease, full financial details. All credit card statements for the past 2 years. His bank account information. Did he have accounts I didn't know about? Any business ventures or investments he might have hidden. Phone records going back to when the affair started. Social media evidence of their relationship. Witness statements. Who knew about the affair? As I worked through the list, a picture emerged that was even worse than I'd imagined. Trevor hadn't just betrayed me emotionally and physically. He'd been systematically preparing to leave me while positioning himself to take as much of my money as possible. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd assumed I was weak. He'd assumed I wouldn't fight back. He'd assumed I'd just accept his version of reality and hand over half of everything I'd earned. He was about to learn how wrong he was. And Brittany, with her greedy smirk and her demands, was going to learn that showing up at my door had been a catastrophic tactical error. I spent the rest of Sunday building my case, page by page, screenshot by screenshot. By the time the sun set, I had a 40-page document outlining every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I had proof of his affair, proof of his financial misconduct, and proof that this had been planned for months. Trevor thought he held all the cards. But I was about to show him that I'd been holding the winning hand all along. He just didn't know it yet. Monday morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. That took more strength than I'd known I had. I put on my Navy suit, my professional armor, and walked into Hartford Financial Group with my head high. If anyone noticed the circles under my eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide, they didn't mention it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I advised companies on protecting their assets, on due diligence, on recognizing financial red flags. Yet I'd missed every warning sign in my own marriage. The thought made me simultaneously want to laugh and cry. Simone, conference room in 10, my boss Gregory called as I passed his office. The Morrison account needs your analysis before noon. I nodded and headed to my cubicle, grateful for the distraction of work. Numbers had always made sense to me. They didn't lie, didn't cheat, didn't show up at your door with pregnant girlfriends demanding their share. Numbers were honest. The morning flew by in a blur of spreadsheets and presentations. It wasn't until my lunch break that I had time to focus on my personal crisis. I sat in my car in the parking garage and pulled out the folder I'd brought from home. Inside was something Trevor didn't know existed. Something I'd almost forgotten about myself until last night's deep dive into old documents. My grandmother's trust fund. Grandma Rose had died when I was 25. She'd been a remarkable woman who'd started her own business in the 1960s when black women entrepreneurs were rare. She'd built a successful catering company, invested wisely, and left detailed instructions in her will. I was to receive her trust fund when I turned 35. I turned 35 3 months ago. The trust had matured. I hadn't told Trevor because I'd honestly forgotten. Life had been busy with work, and the lawyers handling the estate had sent papers to my office address, not my home. I'd signed them, filed them away, meaning to deal with them later. Now I pulled up the account information on my phone. My heart nearly stopped. The trust was worth $1.2 million. Grandma Rose had left me over $1 million, and it had been sitting in my account for 3 months while I'd been none the wiser. The quarterly statement had probably been buried in my work mail. I rarely checked that account since Grandma had set up the trust years ago and I'd just let it accumulate. But here was the critical detail. The trust had been set up in my name only. It had matured after Trevor and I got married, but it was a premarital inheritance. According to most state laws, that meant it was separate property, not marital property. Trevor had no legal claim to it. Unless he knew about it. Then he might try to argue he was entitled to the growth during our marriage or make some other claim. I needed to protect this money. I needed to move it somewhere safe before Trevor even knew it existed. At exactly 10 a.m., I walked into Janet Morrison's law office in downtown Hartford. The reception area screamed success. Modern art on the walls, sleek furniture, and a receptionist who looked like she could run a Fortune 500 company. Ms. Reynolds? A woman in her 50s approached, hand extended. She was tall, black, with natural silver hair cut in a sharp style and a presence that commanded attention. "I'm Janet Morrison. Thank you for coming in." We shook hands and I followed her to a corner office with windows overlooking the city. She gestured to a leather chair across from her massive desk. "Roxanne gave me the highlights," Janet began, pulling out a legal pad. "But I want to hear it from you. Everything." So I told her. From the door opening on Saturday to discovering the stolen money to finding the trust fund this morning. I showed her my evidence folder, now bursting with printed statements and documentation. Janet took notes, asked sharp questions, and occasionally made sounds of disgust that were oddly comforting. "Your husband is an idiot," she said finally. "Not just morally, though there's plenty of that, but legally. He's made every mistake a cheating spouse can make. He documented everything. He used your credit. He stole from joint accounts. He got his mistress pregnant while still legally married. And now he's making demands for assets while having committed financial fraud. So I can win?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. "Win? Honey, you're going to destroy him. With this evidence, you won't pay him a dime. In fact, he'll be lucky if you don't sue him for what he stole. But let's talk strategy." For the next hour, Janet outlined a plan. We wouldn't respond to Trevor's papers immediately. We'd let him think he had control. Meanwhile, I'd move my trust fund money into a protected account that Janet would help me set up. We'd gather more evidence. We'd wait for Trevor to make more mistakes, which Janet assured me he would. "Men like your husband get cocky," she explained. "He thinks he's smarter than you. He thinks you're going to roll over." We let him keep thinking that while we build an airtight case. "What about Brittany? She was part of this too." Janet's smile was cold. "She has no legal standing. She's not his wife. She has no claim to marital property. But her involvement helps us prove the affair, the timeline, everything. She actually did us a favor by showing up at your door. She said they need money for the baby. Not your problem. Not your child. Not your responsibility. Let me be clear, Simone. You owe them nothing. Not one penny. And when we're done, Trevor will be the one owing you." I left Janet's office feeling something I hadn't felt since Saturday. Hope. Real, concrete hope that I wasn't powerless. That I could fight back and win. That afternoon, I made a series of calls. First to the bank handling my trust fund. I explained the situation vaguely, going through a divorce, needed to ensure the account was protected. They confirmed the trust was separate property and helped me move it to a new bank Trevor didn't know about. The money would be safe there. Next, I called a financial advisor Janet had recommended. We set up an appointment for later in the week to discuss investment strategies and asset protection. I wasn't just defending what I had. I was planning for my future without Trevor. Finally, I did something I'd been avoiding. I called my mother. "Baby?" Mom's voice was warm with surprise. "Is everything okay? You usually call on Sundays. Where to even start?" "Mom, I need to tell you something. Trevor's been having an affair. His girlfriend is pregnant. They came to my house demanding money and asking for a divorce." The line went silent for a long moment. Then, "I'm getting on a plane. I'll be there tomorrow." "Mom, you don't have to. My daughter needs me. I'll be there tomorrow." "And Simone? I never liked that man anyway. Always thought he wasn't good enough for you." Despite everything, I smiled. Mothers always know. That evening, alone in the house that now felt too big and too quiet, I continued my investigation. I'd learned to hack Trevor's email, not technically legal, but Janet had said to gather everything I could find. What she didn't know wouldn't hurt her. Trevor's inbox was a goldmine. Emails to Brittany filled with promises and plans. Emails to his friends talking about leaving me and finally being happy. Emails to real estate agents about buying a new house with his fiancée. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. An email thread between Trevor and someone named Greg from his office. They were discussing the opportunity and keeping it quiet. Numbers were mentioned. Large numbers. Phrases like creative accounting and no one will notice showed up repeatedly. Trevor was stealing from his company too. I printed everything, added it to my evidence folder, and emailed copies to my private account. Then I sat back and processed this new information. Trevor wasn't just a cheater. He was a thief and possibly a criminal. If his company discovered what he was doing, he could face more than just divorce. He could face criminal charges. Part of me felt sorry for him. 8 years of marriage meant something, even if he'd betrayed it. But then I remembered Brittany's smirk, Trevor's cold eyes, the way they demanded their share of everything I'd worked for. No, I wouldn't feel sorry for him. I'd feel justice. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Have you made a decision about the papers? We need to move forward. Time is money. B. Brittany. She'd somehow gotten my cell number. Probably from Trevor's phone. The audacity of this woman knew no bounds. I didn't respond. Janet had said not to engage, not to communicate. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them think they were winning while I prepared my counterattack. Another text came through. Don't be difficult. Trevor deserves his fair share. I deserve to build a life with him. Stop being selfish. I laughed out loud at that. I was being selfish? The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband, who'd gotten pregnant with his child, who'd come to my home demanding money, she was calling me selfish? I blocked the number and went back to my research. By midnight, I had enough evidence to bury Trevor in court. Financial theft from our accounts. Proof of the affair. Evidence of his workplace misconduct. Documentation of every lie he'd told. But I wasn't done yet. Janet had said to let him make more mistakes, and I intended to follow that advice. Trevor thought he held all the power. He thought I was weak, broken, defeated. He had no idea I'd spent my entire career analyzing complex financial situations and finding solutions. He thought he was playing checkers. I was playing chess. And I was 3 moves from checkmate. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange duality. On the surface, I appeared to be the devastated wife, barely holding it together. I let Trevor's calls go to voicemail. I ignored Brittany's increasingly demanding texts from new numbers. I told my colleagues I was going through personal issues and appreciated their privacy. Everyone assumed I was falling apart. Underneath, I was building a case that would dismantle Trevor's life piece by piece. My mother arrived as promised. She took one look at me in the empty house and went into full protection mode. She cooked meals, organized the kitchen, and provided the kind of unconditional support only a mother can give. He was always weak, she said one evening as we sat together on the couch. I told your father when you got engaged, I said that boy doesn't have your strength. Your drive. You were going to outgrow him eventually. I loved him, Mom. I know you did, baby. But love isn't enough when the other person isn't willing to grow with you. He got intimidated by your success instead of being proud of it. That's on him, not you. Her words helped more than she knew. I'd been carrying guilt, wondering what I'd done wrong, how I could have prevented this. But the truth was simple. Trevor's betrayal was his choice. His weakness. His failure. Meanwhile, Janet was working her magic. She'd hired a private investigator to follow Trevor and Brittany, documenting everything. She'd filed preliminary paperwork that would freeze our joint accounts once we served divorce papers properly. She'd contacted Trevor's employer anonymously, suggesting they audit his department's finances. The investigation at his work has started, she told me in a conference call. I have a source there. They've found irregularities. It's only a matter of time before they trace it back to Trevor. How long? I asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Be patient. Let it play out. The more pressure he's under, the more mistakes he'll make. I also met with the financial advisor, a sharp woman named Patricia who specialized in protecting assets during divorces. She looked over my entire financial picture and whistled low. You've been smart with money, she said approvingly. Your trust fund alone sets you up nicely, but add your salary, your investments, your retirement accounts? You're in better shape than 90% of people your age. Trevor doesn't know about most of it, I admitted. Good. Let's keep it that way. I'm going to help you restructure everything to be absolutely bulletproof. He won't get a cent of what's yours. We spent 3 hours going through every account, every investment, every asset. Patricia showed me how to document that my trust fund was premarital property, how to prove Trevor was stealing from his company too. I printed everything, added it to my evidence folder, and emailed copies to my private account. Then I sat back and processed this new information. Trevor wasn't just a cheater. He was a thief and possibly a criminal. If his company discovered what he was doing, he could face more than just divorce. He could face criminal charges. Part of me felt sorry for him. 8 years of marriage meant something, even if he'd betrayed it. But then I remembered Brittany's smirk, Trevor's cold eyes, the way they demanded their share of everything I'd worked for. No, I wouldn't feel sorry for him. I'd feel justice. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Have you made a decision about the papers? We need to move forward. Time is money. B. Brittany. She'd somehow gotten my cell number. Probably from Trevor's phone. The audacity of this woman knew no bounds. I didn't respond. Janet had said not to engage, not to communicate. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them think they were winning while I prepared my counterattack. Another text came through, "Don't be difficult. Trevor deserves his fair share. I deserve to build a life with him. Stop being selfish." I laughed out loud at that. I was being selfish? The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband, who'd gotten pregnant with his child, who'd come to my home demanding money, she was calling me selfish? I blocked the number and went back to my research. By midnight, I had enough evidence to bury Trevor in court. Financial theft from our accounts. Proof of the affair. Evidence of his workplace misconduct. Documentation of every lie he'd told. But I wasn't done yet. Janet had said to let him make more mistakes, and I intended to follow that advice. Trevor thought he held all the power. He thought I was weak, broken, defeated. He had no idea I'd spent my entire career analyzing complex financial situations and finding solutions. He thought he was playing checkers. I was playing chess. And I was 3 moves from checkmate. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange duality. On the surface, I appeared to be the devastated wife, barely holding it together. I let Trevor's calls go to voicemail. I ignored Brittany's increasingly demanding texts from new numbers. I told my colleagues I was going through personal issues and appreciated their privacy. Everyone assumed I was falling apart. Underneath, I was building a case that would dismantle Trevor's life piece by piece. My mother arrived as promised. She took one look at me in the empty house and went into full protection mode. She cooked meals, organized the kitchen, and provided the kind of unconditional support only a mother can give. "He was always weak," she said one evening as we sat together on the couch. "I told your father when you got engaged, I said that boy doesn't have your strength, your drive. You were going to outgrow him eventually. I loved him, Mom. I know you did, baby. But love isn't enough when the other person isn't willing to grow with you. He got intimidated by your success instead of being proud of it. That's on him, not you." Her words helped more than she knew. I'd been carrying guilt, wondering what I'd done wrong, how I could have prevented this. But the truth was simple. Trevor's betrayal was his choice. His weakness. His failure. Meanwhile, Janet was working her magic. She'd hired a private investigator to follow Trevor and Brittany, documenting everything. She'd filed preliminary paperwork that would freeze our joint accounts once we served divorce papers properly. She'd contacted Trevor's employer anonymously, suggesting they audit his department's finances. "The investigation at his work has started," she told me in a conference call. "I have a source there. They've found irregularities. It's only a matter of time before they trace it back to Trevor." "How long?" I asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Be patient. Let it play out. The more pressure he's under, the more mistakes he'll make. I also met with the financial advisor, a sharp woman named Patricia who specialized in protecting assets during divorces. She looked over my entire financial picture and whistled low. "You've been smart with money," she said approvingly. "Your trust fund alone sets you up nicely, but add your salary, your investments, your retirement accounts? You're in better shape than 90% of people your age." "Trevor doesn't know about most of it," I admitted. "Good. Let's keep it that way. I'm going to help you restructure everything to be absolutely bulletproof. He won't get a cent of what's yours." We spent 3 hours going through every account, every investment, every asset. Patricia showed me how to document that my trust fund was premarital property, how to prove my contributions to our joint accounts vastly exceeded Trevor's, how to protect my retirement accounts and investments. By the time we finished, I had a comprehensive financial protection plan. Trevor thought he was going to walk away with half of everything. He was going to walk away with nothing. That weekend, Roxanne came over with wine and sympathy. We sat in my backyard enjoying the warm evening, while I filled her in on everything. "I still can't believe they showed up at your door like that," she said, shaking her head. "The nerve. The absolute nerve." "I think Brittany thought she was marking her territory," I replied. "Like showing me she'd won. Trevor was hers now. She's in for a rude awakening. Janet Morrison doesn't lose cases like this. Neither does Patricia. You've assembled a dream team." "I've also been thinking about what comes after," I admitted. "After the divorce. I don't want to just survive this. I want to thrive." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my laptop and showed her the business plan I'd been working on. A consulting firm. Financial literacy and asset protection for women going through divorces. I've seen firsthand how many women don't understand their financial situation until it's too late. I want to help them. Roxanne's eyes lit up as she read through my proposal. "Simone, this is brilliant. You could really help people. And you have the credentials, the experience, and now unfortunately the personal experience. I have the trust fund to start it. I could leave Hartford, go out on my own. Build something that's entirely mine. Do it, Roxanne said immediately. Life's too short to not take the leap. And honestly, the best revenge is success. Let Trevor and Brittany struggle while you build an empire. Her words stayed with me that night. The best revenge is success. Not just winning the divorce, though I intended to do that, but building a life so good, so fulfilling, that Trevor's betrayal became the best thing that ever happened to me. On Monday, Trevor finally called my office directly. My assistant put him through before I could tell her to screen the call. "Simone, we need to talk," he said without preamble. "You've been avoiding me." "I have nothing to say to you, Trevor. Look, I know this is hard, but we're adults. We can handle this maturely. Just sign the papers. Make this easy on both of us." I almost laughed. "Make this easy on you, you mean? Don't be like that. I'm not trying to hurt you more than necessary. But I have rights. I deserve my fair share of what we built together." "What we built together?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Trevor, I built this. My salary paid for most of the house. My bonuses filled our savings account. My credit cards you used to wine and dine your girlfriend. Tell me exactly what you built." He was quiet for a moment. "It's not about who earned more. It's about what's fair. Is it fair that you stole from me? That you used my money to set up a life with another woman? That you got her pregnant while we were still married? I don't know what you're talking about. The $47,000 you transferred out of our joint account. Should we talk about that?" Another silence. Longer this time. "I had expenses." "Yes. An apartment for your mistress. Furniture for said apartment. Expensive dinners and hotels and jewelry that certainly weren't for me. I have records of everything, Trevor. Every transaction. Every lie. You don't understand?" "Oh, I understand perfectly. You're a thief and a liar. And you're not getting one penny from me. You want a divorce? Fine. But it'll be on my terms, not yours." I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I'd broken Janet's rule about not engaging, but it felt good. It felt powerful. My phone rang again immediately. I didn't answer. A text came through, "You're making a mistake. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." I forwarded the message to Janet with a note. "He's threatening me." Her response came fast. "Perfect. Keep every text. Every email. Every call. He's digging his own grave." That evening, the private investigator Janet hired sent me his weekly report. Trevor and Brittany had been house hunting, looking at properties way outside their budget. They'd been dining at expensive restaurants, shopping at high-end stores. They were spending money they didn't have, clearly expecting to get a windfall from our divorce settlement. The report also showed something interesting. Trevor and Brittany had been arguing. The investigator had caught them on camera outside a restaurant, clearly fighting. Brittany was gesturing angrily and Trevor looked stressed and defensive. Trouble in paradise already. Not surprising. Relationships built on betrayal rarely lasted. The report also documented Trevor's work situation. He was arriving late, leaving early, taking long lunch breaks. His colleagues were avoiding him. He'd been called into his boss's office 3 times in the past week. The investigation into his department's finances was clearly causing problems. Everything was falling into place exactly as Janet had predicted. Trevor was under pressure from multiple fronts: his job, his demanding pregnant girlfriend, the divorce he thought would be simple. And he was making mistakes left and right. Meanwhile, I was getting stronger every day. The initial shock and pain were transforming into determination. I was sleeping better, eating better, working out. I was taking care of myself in ways I hadn't in years. Mom noticed the change. "You're starting to look like yourself again," she said one morning over coffee. "That light's coming back in your eyes." "I'm starting to see the future," I told her. "And Trevor's not in it." "Good. You deserve so much better than what he gave you." By the end of the month, Janet called with news. Trevor's company is conducting a formal investigation. They found evidence of embezzlement. Nothing's official yet, but my source says he's going to be fired. Possibly face criminal charges. How much did he steal from them? Looks like over $100,000 over 2 years. He was sophisticated about it, moving small amounts frequently. But not sophisticated enough. They traced it all back to him. I processed this information. Trevor was about to lose his job and possibly his freedom. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad for who he used to be before greed and weakness consumed him. "What does this mean for the divorce?" I asked. "It means he's going to have much bigger problems than dividing assets with you. It means when we do go to court, he'll look like exactly what he is, a criminal and a cheat. No judge is going to award him anything. And Brittany? She's about to realize she hitched her wagon to a sinking ship. My investigator reports they're fighting more frequently. I give it 2 months before she leaves him. She's pregnant with his baby. She claims to be. But Simone, I've seen this pattern before. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some truth-bending happening there too. Either way, it's not your problem. She was right. None of this was my problem anymore. Trevor had made his choices. Brittany had made hers. I was making mine too, the choice to fight, to win, and to build something better from the ashes of my marriage. The only question now was when to strike. When to serve Trevor with papers that would show him just how badly he'd miscalculated. Janet and I were waiting for the perfect moment. That moment was coming soon. And when it arrived, Trevor was going to learn a lesson he'd never forget. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, everything exploded at Trevor's workplace. I heard about it first from Janet's source inside the company, then from the news when the story went public that afternoon. Trevor had been arrested at his desk for embezzlement and fraud. The company's investigation had uncovered more than $150,000 in stolen funds, all carefully traced back to Trevor's schemes. He'd been creating false vendor accounts, approving fake invoices, and pocketing the money over a 2-year period. The evidence was overwhelming and thoroughly documented. I watched the news coverage from my office, the anchor describing the arrest of a Hartford financial employee. They didn't name Trevor initially due to legal reasons, but anyone who knew him would recognize the details. Mid-level manager, worked there for 6 years, arrested for financial crimes. My phone exploded with calls and texts. Colleagues who'd heard rumors about my separation putting 2 and 2 together. Friends reaching out with concern and questions. My mother calling to make sure I was okay. But the call I was waiting for came from Janet. "Did you see the news?" "I saw it." Perfect timing. Trevor's lawyer is going to be busy with the criminal case. He won't have resources to fight us on the divorce. We're filing our papers today. Tomorrow morning at the latest, Trevor will be served with the real divorce petition. The one that outlines every single thing he did wrong and asks for full recovery of stolen marital funds. How bad is the criminal case? I asked, surprised by how calm I felt. Bad. Federal charges because he used wire transfers. He's looking at 5 to 10 years if convicted. Maybe less with a plea deal. But Simone, this is excellent for you. Any judge looking at our divorce case will see Trevor as a criminal who stole from everyone, including you. You're the victim here. After we hung up, I sat in my office and tried to process how I felt. I should have felt vindicated. Triumphant. Trevor was getting exactly what he deserved. Instead, I felt empty. This was the man I'd married, the man I'd built a life with. Watching him destroy himself was less satisfying than I'd imagined. But I also felt free. This chapter of my life was closing permanently. There was no going back from this. No possibility of reconciliation, not that I'd wanted one. Just a clean break and a fresh start. My boss Gregory knocked on my office door. "Simone? Got a minute?" I gestured him in, expecting the conversation I'd been dreading. Questions about Trevor, about how this affected my position at the company. Instead, Gregory closed the door and sat down. "I want to talk to you about something. The senior analyst position just opened up. Edwards is retiring next month. The job is yours if you want it." I blinked in surprise. "Really? You're the best analyst on the team. You've been doing Edwards's work half the time anyway. 20% raise, your own office, a team to manage. Interested?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." "Good. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork. Congratulations, Simone. And for what it's worth, whatever's happening in your personal life, I'm sorry. But you've handled it with incredible professionalism. That doesn't go unnoticed." After he left, I sat in my cubicle that would soon be an office and laughed. Really laughed for the first time in weeks. Trevor was being arrested and losing everything. I was getting promoted and building my future. The universe had a sense of humor after all. That evening, Mom made my favorite dinner, her famous pot roast with all the sides. We sat together at the table, just the two of us, and for the first time I felt truly peaceful about everything. "You're handling this better than I expected," Mom said, watching me eat. "I think I'm just relieved," I admitted. "It's over. Really over. There's no way back from this, no possibility of him trying to manipulate his way back into my life. He's facing criminal charges. Our marriage is done. How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, grateful. If this hadn't happened, if he'd been smarter about his cheating and stealing, I might have lived in that marriage for years not knowing the truth. At least now I know. And I can move forward with my eyes wide open. That's my girl. always looking for the lesson. The next morning, Trevor was served with divorce papers at the county jail where he was being held pending bail. According to Janet, the serving officer reported that Trevor had lost his composure upon reading the petition that detailed every single one of his offenses and demanded full recovery of stolen funds plus damages. "He's asking for a meeting," Janet told me. "His public defender wants to discuss settlement options." "Absolutely not. We're going to court." "You sure? A settlement might be faster." "I'm sure. I want everything on the record. I want a judge to see exactly what he did. I want it public." "All right then. We go to trial. Though I'm guessing once Trevor and his lawyer see our evidence, they'll be begging for a settlement anyway." That afternoon my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Simone." Brittany's voice was shrill with panic. "Simone, I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you. Please just listen. I didn't know. I didn't know he was stealing from his company or from you. He told me you guys had money, that everything was fine. I didn't know. What do you want, Brittany?" "I'm scared. I'm 7 months pregnant and Trevor's in jail. His lawyer says he could go to prison for years. I can't raise a baby alone. I need help." The audacity was breathtaking. She was calling me, the wife she'd helped betray, asking for help with the baby that resulted from her affair with my husband. "Let me be very clear," I said slowly. "Your problems are not my problems. You chose to have an affair with a married man. You chose to get pregnant. You chose to show up at my door demanding money with that smirk on your face. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. But the baby is not my responsibility. You want help? Call your family. Call his family. Call social services. But do not call me again." I hung up and blocked the number. Then I called Janet and told her about the call. "Good response," she said approvingly. "Do not engage with her. She has no claim on you or your assets. Let her figure it out." Over the next week, the extent of Trevor's crimes became public knowledge. The local news covered the story extensively. Local financial professional arrested for fraud. His mugshot was on the evening news. The scandal rippled through our social circles. I received an outpouring of support from friends I hadn't talked to in years. Former colleagues. College friends. People who'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't known what to say. The common theme was the same: you deserve so much better. I was beginning to believe it. The court date for the divorce was set for 2 months out. Trevor made bail thanks to his parents mortgaging their house, but the conditions were strict. He couldn't leave the state. He had to check in regularly. He was essentially under house arrest while awaiting trial for the embezzlement charges. Janet kept me updated on every development. Trevor's lawyer was scrambling, clearly overwhelmed by the criminal case and the divorce case simultaneously. Brittany had moved out of their apartment, according to the private investigator. She'd gone back to her parents' house in another state. "The relationship is over," Janet reported. "My investigator says she left without even telling Trevor. Just packed up while he was at a court hearing and disappeared." "The baby?" I asked, though I tried not to care. "Who knows? But that's Trevor's problem to figure out, not yours." Meanwhile, I was making moves of my own. I'd started working with Patricia on the business plan for my consulting firm. I'd registered the LLC, designed a website, and begun reaching out to my network about my plans. The response was overwhelming. So many women wanted what I was offering: financial literacy, asset protection, divorce planning from someone who understood both the emotional and practical aspects. "You're going to be successful," Patricia told me during one of our planning sessions. "This is needed. And you have the credibility now, unfortunately, to really help people understand what can happen." I'd also started looking at real estate. Not just for myself but for investment. The trust fund from Grandma Rose gave me capital to work with. I toured several properties: a duplex that could generate rental income, a small commercial space that could house my business, a beautiful condo in a new development downtown. My mother watched all of this with pride. "Look at you," she said one evening. 2 months ago you were devastated. Now you're building an empire." "I'm building my life," I corrected. "On my terms. The way I should have been doing all along." "What about dating? Relationships?" I shook my head. "Not even thinking about that right now. I need to focus on me. On my business. On my future. Maybe someday, but not now." Though I had to admit, I'd noticed a man at the coffee shop near my office. We'd smiled at each other a few times but nothing more. He was handsome, seemed kind, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. The court date approached. Janet prepared me for what to expect: Questions from Trevor's lawyer, the presentation of evidence, witness testimony if needed. I reviewed our case files, memorized the timeline, prepared myself to face Trevor in court. "You're going to do great," Janet assured me. "Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. The evidence speaks for itself." The day before the hearing, I visited Grandma Rose's grave for the first time since her funeral. I brought flowers and sat beside her headstone, telling her everything that had happened. "Thank you for the trust fund," I said aloud, not caring if anyone heard. "Thank you for believing in me enough to leave me that foundation. I'm going to use it well. I promise." A breeze rustled the leaves overhead and I smiled. Grandma Rose had always been practical, strong, independent. She'd survived her own share of hardships and betrayals. She'd understand what I was doing and why. I was taking back my life, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. And Trevor's fall from grace was just collateral damage from his own bad decisions. I hadn't destroyed him. He'd destroyed himself. I was just making sure he didn't take me down with him. Tomorrow would be the first step toward my official freedom. And I was ready. The morning of the divorce hearing started with rain. Heavy, unseasonable rain that felt appropriate for the closure of such a painful chapter. I dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit that projected confidence and professionalism. My mother hugged me tight before I left. "You've got this," she whispered. "And I'm so proud of you." Janet met me outside the courthouse, her own professional armor in place. "Ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay calm. Answer questions directly. Don't let Trevor or his lawyer rattle you. We have all the evidence we need." We walked into the courthouse together, through security, up to the third floor where family court proceedings were held. The hallway was filled with other couples in various stages of marital dissolution. Some looked sad, some angry, some just exhausted. I wondered what my face looked like to them. Trevor was already there with his public defender, a young man who looked overwhelmed by his caseload. Trevor had lost weight. His suit hung loosely on his frame, and his eyes had dark circles that matched mine from weeks ago. He looked up when I entered and something flickered across his face. Regret? Anger? I couldn't tell and no longer cared. We took our positions on opposite sides of the courtroom. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the case file in front of her. "This is the divorce proceeding for Reynolds versus Reynolds," she began. "I've reviewed the initial petitions from both sides. This is quite a complicated case. Your Honor," Janet stood. "If I may, while both parties initially filed for divorce, my client's petition outlines significant misconduct by Mr. Reynolds that we believe should inform the court's decision on asset division." Trevor's lawyer stood as well. "Your Honor, my client disputes many of these allegations and believes they're being used to unfairly influence the proceedings. I'll hear evidence from both sides. Let's begin." For the next 3 hours, Janet methodically presented our case. Bank statements showing Trevor's systematic theft from joint accounts. Credit card bills for purchases benefiting his mistress. Phone records documenting the affair. Lease agreements for the apartment he'd rented. Emails discussing his plans to leave me and take half of everything. Then came the evidence of his work misconduct. Documents from his employer's investigation. Proof of embezzlement. The criminal charges pending against him. Trevor's lawyer tried to object, argue, deflect. But the evidence was overwhelming. Numbers didn't lie. Documentation didn't lie. The truth was laid out in black and white, undeniable and damning. "Your Honor," Janet concluded, "Mr. Reynolds systematically betrayed his wife, stole from their joint accounts, used her credit for his affair, and committed crimes that have resulted in criminal charges. Ms. Reynolds is not seeking revenge. She's seeking justice and the return of what was stolen from her." Then it was Trevor's turn to present his case. His lawyer tried to paint a picture of a marriage that had simply fallen apart, two people growing in different directions. He tried to minimize the affair, suggesting it happened because I was always working and neglecting the marriage. I sat perfectly still, refusing to react. Janet had warned me this would happen. Blame the victim. Make it somehow my fault that Trevor cheated and stole. But when Trevor took the stand, things fell apart quickly. "Mr. Reynolds," Janet began her cross-examination, "you claim the marriage fell apart mutually. Yet you never mentioned to your wife that you were unhappy?" I tried to tell her. She wouldn't listen. "Interesting. In your emails to Ms. Brittany, the woman you had an affair with, you wrote, and I quote, 'Simone has no idea. She's so focused on work she doesn't notice anything.' Does that sound like someone you tried to communicate with?" Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "That's taken out of context." "Is it?" Let's talk about context. You systematically transferred $47,000 from your joint accounts over 10 months. Money that primarily came from your wife's salary and bonuses. Did you tell her about these transfers? We had joint access to the accounts. That's not what I asked. Did you tell her you were taking this money? Silence. Mr. Reynolds, answer the question. No, he admitted quietly. And what did you do with this $47,000? I had expenses. Expenses like renting an apartment for your mistress? Buying furniture for said apartment? Taking Ms. Brittany on vacations while telling your wife you couldn't afford to celebrate your anniversary? Those expenses. Trevor's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge's expression had shifted from neutral to disapproving. Janet continued, pulling apart every excuse, every justification, every attempt to minimize what Trevor had done. By the time she finished, Trevor looked defeated, slumped in the witness chair. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. I had to take the stand. Ms. Reynolds, Janet began gently, can you describe your financial situation before your marriage? I took a breath and began. I worked hard through college, graduated with honors. I got a good job at Hartford Financial Group, worked my way up to senior analyst. I was always careful with money, saving for the future. And during your marriage? I continued advancing in my career. I received bonuses, promotions, raises. I contributed the majority of our household income. Trevor's salary was lower, and we agreed I'd handle the financial planning since it was my expertise. Did you trust your husband with access to your accounts? Yes. We were married. I trusted him completely. When did you discover the affair? 2 months ago. His mistress came to my door with him. She was pregnant. They demanded I give them half of our assets so they could start their life together. I heard a small gasp from somewhere in the courtroom. The judge's eyebrows raised slightly. How did that make you feel? Betrayed. Devastated. But also angry. I'd worked so hard for what we had, and he wanted to take half of it to give to the woman he'd been cheating with. It felt like being robbed twice. Did you know about the money he'd been taking from your accounts? No. I discovered it afterward when I started investigating. I found almost $50,000 missing, all used to support his affair. And the criminal charges he's now facing? I had no idea he was stealing from his employer too. I thought I knew him. I was wrong. Trevor's lawyer tried to shake my testimony on cross-examination, suggesting I'd been controlling with money or neglectful of the marriage. But I stayed calm, answered honestly, and let the evidence speak for itself. When both sides had presented their cases, the judge took a recess to review the evidence. An hour later we were called back. I've reviewed everything presented today, the judge began. This is one of the more clear-cut cases I've seen. Mr. Reynolds, your actions constitute not just marital infidelity, but financial fraud against your spouse. You systematically stole from joint accounts, used her credit for your affair, and committed crimes that resulted in criminal charges. Trevor stood frozen as the judge continued. Ms. Reynolds is not only entitled to keep her separate property, including her premarital inheritance, but is also entitled to full recovery of all funds stolen from joint accounts. Furthermore, given Mr. Reynolds' criminal conduct, I'm awarding Ms. Reynolds her full legal fees and damages. Janet squeezed my hand under the table. Mr. Reynolds, you will receive nothing from this divorce. No share of the house, no portion of retirement accounts, no claim on any assets. Furthermore, you owe Ms. Reynolds $47,000 in restitution for stolen funds, plus an additional $25,000 in damages and legal fees. This divorce is granted, effective immediately. The gavel came down. Just like that, my marriage was over. Trevor's face went white. His lawyer looked relieved to be done with the case. I sat perfectly still, processing that it was actually over. Congratulations, Janet whispered. You won everything. We left the courtroom quickly, avoiding Trevor and his lawyer. Outside, the rain had stopped and weak sunshine was breaking through the clouds. What happens now? I asked. Now, you start your new life. The money he owes you will likely come from his parents or through a payment plan after his criminal sentence. But Simone, you're free. Legally, financially, completely free. I took a deep breath of the rain-washed air. Free. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. My phone buzzed with texts. Roxanne, how'd it go? Mom, call me as soon as you can. My sister, thinking of you. I responded to each one with the same message. I won. It's over. That evening, Roxanne came over with champagne. To freedom, she toasted. To new beginnings, I countered. We drank and talked about the future. About my business plans. About the condo I was about to put an offer on. About everything except Trevor in the past 8 years. How do you feel? Roxanne asked eventually. Honestly? Relieved. It's really over. I don't have to think about him anymore. I can just move forward. Any regrets? I thought about that. I regret the time I wasted. But I don't regret the lessons I learned. I know myself better now. I know what I won't tolerate, what I deserve, what I want from life. That knowledge is valuable. What about dating? Meeting someone new? Eventually. But not now. I need to rebuild my life first. Figure out who I am as a single woman. Get my business off the ground. Maybe in a year or two. Roxanne smiled. You're going to be amazing. I know it. Later that night, alone in my house that would soon be sold, I sat in the living room where it had all begun 2 months ago. The doorbell that had rung. Trevor and Brittany on the porch. That greedy smirk. They'd thought they were coming to take what was mine. Instead, they triggered a chain of events that had exposed all of Trevor's crimes, ended his career, and freed me to build something better. In a weird way, I was grateful to Brittany for showing up that day. If she hadn't, I might have discovered the affair eventually, but maybe not the theft. Maybe not the embezzlement. I might have gotten a mediocre divorce settlement and lived with regrets. Instead, I'd fought back. I'd won. And I was about to build a life better than anything I'd had before. The next chapter was about to begin. And this time I was writing it myself. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I heard through mutual friends about Trevor's downward spiral. I didn't seek out the information, but people love to share gossip, especially when it involved a spectacular fall from grace. Trevor had been convicted of embezzlement after taking a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison with the possibility of early release after 3 if he showed good behavior. His career in finance was over. His reputation was destroyed. His parents, who'd mortgaged their retirement home to make his bail, were devastated. Brittany had disappeared completely. According to Roxanne, who knew someone, she'd moved back to her home state and told people there that the baby's father was out of the picture. Whether Trevor was even the father remained a mystery he'd have to sort out after his release. Part of me felt vindicated hearing this. The people who'd shown up at my door with demands and smirks were both suffering the consequences of their choices. But mostly I felt nothing. They were no longer relevant to my life. I'd moved on completely. And what a move it had been. I'd left my job at Hartford Financial Group despite the promotion they'd offered. The senior analyst position would have been great, but I wanted more. I wanted to build something of my own. Using Grandma Rose's trust fund and my savings, I'd started Reynolds Financial Consulting. My specialty? Helping women protect their finances before, during, and after divorce. Asset protection. Financial literacy. Investment strategies. Everything I'd learned from my own experience, combined with my professional expertise, packaged into a service desperately needed in the market. The response had been overwhelming. Word spread quickly through professional networks, support groups, and personal referrals. Within 2 months, I had 12 clients. Within 3 months, I had a waiting list. I'd hired an assistant, rented a small but professional office space, and developed comprehensive programs for different client needs. Basic financial literacy for women who'd never handled money independently. Asset protection for high-net-worth individuals going through divorce. Investment consulting for women rebuilding after financial abuse. Every client had a story that echoed parts of mine. Husbands who'd controlled finances. Partners who'd stolen or hidden money. Women who'd trusted and been betrayed. I helped them avoid the mistakes I'd made and recover from the damage done to them. Patricia, my financial advisor, had become a close friend and occasional business partner. We referred clients to each other and sometimes co-led workshops on financial planning and protection. "You found your calling," she told me one afternoon over coffee. "I can see it in how you talk about the work. You're passionate about helping these women." I never wanted this expertise, I admitted. But since I have it, I might as well use it to help others avoid my pain. I'd also made good on my real estate investment plans. I'd purchased the duplex I'd toured months ago, renovated one unit for myself and rented out the other. The rental income covered my mortgage and then some. I'd bought 2 more investment properties with loan leverage, building a portfolio that generated passive income while appreciating in value. The condo in the new downtown development had become my home. Modern, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded every room with light. It was the opposite of the house I'd shared with Trevor. This space was entirely mine, decorated to my taste, filled only with things I loved. My mother had finally returned to her own home, confident I was thriving. "I'm so proud of you," she'd said before leaving. "You took something terrible and turned it into something beautiful." I'd started traveling too. Weekend trips at first, then longer vacations. I visited Paris, always a dream. Spent 2 weeks in Italy. Explored the Caribbean. Each trip was a gift to myself, a celebration of my freedom and independence. But not everything was about work and solo adventures. I'd built a community too. Weekly dinners with Roxanne and other friends. A book club I joined. Volunteer work with a women's shelter, teaching financial literacy workshops for free. And I'd met someone. Not romantically, I wasn't ready for that yet, though I was starting to open to the possibility. His name was Julian, and he was an architect who designed the renovations for my duplex. We'd struck up a friendship during the project that had continued after completion. We met for coffee sometimes, talked about our work, shared stories about our lives. He was divorced too, understood the complications of starting over. We'd been to a few community events together as friends. Nothing more, though I'd noticed the way he looked at me sometimes suggested he might be interested in more when I was ready. "Take your time," he'd said when I'd explained I wasn't looking for romance. "I'm not going anywhere. And besides, I value your friendship regardless." That kind of respect, that patience was exactly what I needed right now. One evening, I was at a networking event for small business owners when I saw Trevor's former colleague Greg across the room. He'd been mentioned in the investigation but hadn't been charged with anything. He noticed me and hesitated, probably debating whether to approach. I made the decision for him, walking over with a professional smile. "Greg, right? We met at Trevor's company events a few times." He looked uncomfortable. "Simone, I heard about everything. I'm sorry for what you went through." "Thank you." Water under the bridge now. For what it's worth, a lot of us had no idea about Trevor's personal situation. The embezzlement shocked everyone. We thought we knew him. "Me too," I said honestly. "But we only know what people choose to show us." We chatted briefly about my new business, his career, mutual connections. It was civil, even pleasant. The past truly was the past. Later that month, I was featured in a local business magazine. "Woman turns personal tragedy into thriving consulting practice." Read the headline. The article detailed my journey from discovering my husband's betrayal to starting my own firm. I'd been hesitant about sharing my story so publicly, but Janet had convinced me. "Your story will help other women," she'd argued. "It shows them they can survive and thrive after betrayal." She was right. After the article published, my client list exploded. Women reached out saying my story gave them hope, gave them courage to leave bad situations, gave them confidence to take control of their finances. I hired 2 more employees, a financial analyst and a client coordinator. Reynolds Financial Consulting was growing beyond my initial dreams. 6 months after the divorce, I received an unexpected call from Trevor's mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Simone dear," Mrs. Reynolds' voice was strained. "I hope I'm not overstepping. I just wanted to apologize for what Trevor did to you. We raised him better than that. We're so ashamed." "Mrs. Reynolds, you don't need to apologize for your son's choices." "I know. But I want you to know that we never supported what he did. Breaking our family's trust, losing our retirement savings for his legal fees, it's been difficult. But we deserved it for raising a man who could betray his wife so completely." "I'm sorry you've been hurt by this too," I said genuinely. "You were always too good for him. I knew it even when you got married. You were smart, ambitious, kind. He was lucky to have you and he threw it away for nothing. For a woman who left him the moment things got hard." We talked for a few more minutes. She told me Trevor wrote letters from prison, claiming he was sorry that he'd made terrible mistakes. She said Brittany had indeed moved away and cut off all contact. "I hope you're well," she said finally. "I hope you're happy." "I am," I told her. "I really am." After we hung up, I reflected on that conversation. Trevor's parents were good people who'd raised a son who made terrible choices. They didn't deserve to lose their retirement security. But that wasn't my responsibility. I couldn't save everyone from Trevor's consequences. That weekend, Julian and I went to an art gallery opening together. We walked through the exhibits, discussing the pieces, laughing at the pretentious descriptions. It felt easy, comfortable, natural. "Can I ask you something?" he said as we stood in front of a painting of a woman breaking free from chains. "Sure. Are you dating anyone?" I looked at him, at his kind eyes and patient smile. "No." "Are you asking because you're interested?" "I am. But only if you're ready." I meant what I said about being friends. I value that. But I'd also like to explore whether there could be more when and if you're ready. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Was I ready? Maybe not for serious commitment. But for dinner dates and seeing where things went? Maybe. How about we start slow, I suggested. Actual dates, not just friend hangouts, but taking our time. No pressure. His smile widened. I'd like that very much. We left the gallery and walked through the downtown area, talking about our hopes for the future. His architectural projects. My business expansion plans. Everything felt possible. Later, alone in my beautiful condo, I looked around at the life I'd built from the ruins of my marriage. I'd started with nothing but a trust fund from my grandmother and the determination to not let Trevor's betrayal define me. Now I had a thriving business helping other women. Investment properties generating income. Financial security beyond anything I'd had before. Genuine friendships and community. And the possibility of new love when I was truly ready. Trevor was in prison. Brittany was gone. Their greedy plans had collapsed under the weight of their own poor choices. And me? I was flying. The best revenge, Roxanne had told me months ago, was success. She'd been absolutely right. I didn't need to destroy Trevor. He'd destroyed himself. All I'd needed to do was protect what was mine and build something better. Mission accomplished. 1 year after the divorce, I stood in front of 30 women in a hotel conference room, teaching my first large-scale financial literacy workshop. The room was full of energy, women taking notes, asking questions, sharing their own stories of financial struggles and triumphs. The most important thing to understand, I told them, is that financial independence is emotional independence. When you control your money, you control your choices. No one can manipulate you, threaten you, or control you through finances. A woman in the front row raised her hand. But what if you're married? Isn't separate money a sign you don't trust your partner? Smart question, I replied. Trust and protection aren't opposites. You can love your spouse and still have your own accounts, your own investments, your own financial knowledge. In fact, if both partners are financially literate and independent, it strengthens the relationship because you're choosing each other, not needing each other financially. The nods around the room told me my message was landing. These women got it. They understood what I was teaching wasn't about preparing for betrayal, but about preparing for life. About being smart and protected regardless of what happened. After the workshop, women lined up to talk to me. Some wanted to hire me for personal consulting. Others just wanted to share their stories and thank me for the workshop. Each conversation reinforced why I'd started this business. You saved my financial life, one woman told me, tears in her eyes. Your article gave me the courage to check my accounts. I found out my husband had taken out credit cards in my name. Because of your advice, I was able to protect myself before he did more damage. These moments made everything worthwhile. Every difficult day of building the business, every late night working on client strategies, every challenging case, it all mattered because I was genuinely helping people. Reynolds Financial Consulting had grown beyond my initial dreams. I now had 5 employees, including 2 financial analysts, a client coordinator, a marketing manager, and an office manager. We'd moved into a larger office space with room for growth. Our client list had expanded to over 60 active clients with a waiting list of 30 more. We'd also developed strategic partnerships. I worked closely with divorce attorneys like Janet, therapists specializing in financial trauma, and accountants who handled complex asset division. We'd created a comprehensive network of professionals who could help women through every aspect of financial recovery. But I wasn't just building a business. I was building a movement. I'd started a podcast called Financial Freedom, where I interviewed women who'd overcome financial abuse, rebuilt after divorce, or achieved financial independence against the odds. The podcast had taken off, reaching thousands of listeners each episode. I wrote a monthly column for the business magazine that had first featured me, providing financial advice and sharing real stories from my practice. I'd been interviewed on local news programs and national podcasts about financial literacy for women, and I'd started work on a book. Financially Ever After, How to Protect Your Money in Marriage and Beyond, was under contract with a major publisher. Patricia was co-authoring with me, combining our expertise into a comprehensive guide. My investment portfolio had grown too. I now owned 5 rental properties, all fully occupied with good tenants. The passive income covered all my living expenses, which meant my business income could be reinvested into growth or saved for future opportunities. I'd diversified into stocks, bonds, and index funds. I'd started a retirement account that was growing steadily. I'd set up trusts and protections that would ensure my wealth would be preserved regardless of what happened in my personal life. Grandma Rose would have been proud. Her trust fund had been the seed that grew into this entire empire. I visited her grave regularly, updating her on everything I'd built with her gift. "You started all of this," I told her gravestone during one visit. "That money you left me wasn't just financial capital. It was confidence capital. It gave me the foundation to take risks to build something meaningful." "Thank you." My personal life had evolved too. Julian and I had been dating for 6 months, taking things slowly and carefully. He was patient, kind, emotionally intelligent in ways Trevor never had been. He celebrated my successes without feeling threatened. He supported my business without trying to control it. He was secure enough in himself to date a woman who didn't need him financially. "I love that you're independent," he told me one evening over dinner. "It means you're with me because you want to be, not because you need to be. That's real partnership." We talked about the future sometimes. Neither of us was rushing toward anything, but we both acknowledged this relationship felt different. Healthier. More balanced. Built on mutual respect and genuine compatibility rather than need or desperation. I'd also reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Women I'd worked with in previous jobs. College friends who drifted away. I built a strong social circle of supportive, ambitious women who lifted each other up. One evening, I hosted a dinner party at my condo. 8 women, all strong and successful in different fields. We ate good food, drank wine, laughed until our faces hurt, and talked about everything from business strategies to dating to dreams for the future. "Look at us," Roxanne said, raising her glass. "All of us have survived something. Divorce, job loss, family drama, health scares. And we're all thriving anyway." "To resilience," someone toasted. "To community," another added. "To building the lives we deserve," I finished. We clinked glasses and I felt overwhelmingly grateful for this moment. For these friendships. For this life I'd built from the ashes of my broken marriage. The following week, I received an unexpected email. It was from a women's foundation that provided grants to female entrepreneurs. They wanted to feature my business in their annual report and were considering Reynolds Financial Consulting for a grant to expand services to underserved communities. I worked with my team to put together a proposal. We outlined a plan to offer free financial literacy workshops in community centers, schools, and women's shelters. We wanted to reach women who couldn't afford private consulting but desperately needed financial education. 2 months later, we were awarded a $50,000 grant. The announcement came with media coverage and recognition that raised our profile even further. More clients, more speaking opportunities, more chances to make an impact. But the highlight of that year came in December, exactly 1 year after Trevor and Brittany had shown up at my door with their greedy demands. I was invited to speak at a national conference on women's financial empowerment. 500 women in attendance, plus live stream viewers around the country. I stood on that stage and told my story. The betrayal, the theft, the fight to protect what was mine. And then the rebuilding, the business, the investments, the life I'd created. I didn't sugarcoat the pain, but I emphasized the possibility. "You are not defined by what was done to you," I told the audience. "You are defined by what you do next." Every woman in this room has the power to take control of her financial future. To build security, wealth, and independence. It won't be easy. It will require courage, determination, and probably some tears. But it is absolutely possible. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Women approached me afterward with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories, thanking me for giving them hope. That night, back in my hotel room, I video called Mom to tell her about the speech. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she said, her own eyes wet. "You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something that's helping thousands of women. That's remarkable." "I learned from the best," I told her. "You showed me how to be strong. How to stand up for myself. How to never let anyone diminish me." After we hung up, I sat by the window looking out at the city lights. 1 year ago, I'd been devastated. Broken. Unsure if I could survive the betrayal. Now I was thriving beyond anything I'd imagined possible. I'd built a business that mattered. Created wealth that would last. Developed relationships that were genuine and healthy. Found purpose in helping others avoid my pain. Trevor was still in prison, serving his sentence for the crimes he'd committed. Brittany was somewhere raising her child alone, having learned that actions have consequences. Their greedy plans had imploded spectacularly. Meanwhile, I was living my best life. Not in spite of what happened, but in some ways because of it. The betrayal had forced me to take control of my life in ways I might never have otherwise. It had revealed my own strength, my resilience, my capability. I wasn't grateful for Trevor's betrayal. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. But I was grateful for who I'd become in the aftermath. For the business I'd built, the women I'd helped, the life I was living. The best revenge wasn't making Trevor suffer. It was building something so successful, so fulfilling, so meaningful that his absence became irrelevant. He'd thought he was taking something from me when he left. Instead, he'd given me the push I needed to create something far better than the life we'd had together. And that was the greatest victory of all. 18 months after the divorce, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. The return address was the federal prison where Trevor was serving his sentence. I stared at it for a long moment before deciding to open it. Dear Simone, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to try anyway. I'm writing to apologize for everything I did to you. The affair, the stealing, the lies. I was a terrible husband and an even worse person. Being in prison has given me a lot of time to think about my choices and their consequences. I destroyed our marriage, betrayed your trust, and threw away the best thing in my life. There's no excuse for what I did. I was selfish, greedy, and stupid. You deserved so much better than how I treated you. I heard through my parents that you've started a successful business helping women with finances. That doesn't surprise me at all. You were always the smart one, the capable one. I held you back and I see that now. I also heard you might be seeing someone new. I hope he treats you the way you deserve to be treated, the way I never did. The reason I'm writing, besides apologizing, is to ask for help. I know it's a lot to ask. I know I have no right. But I'm desperate. I'm up for early release in 6 months if I can show the parole board that I have support and a plan for rehabilitation. My parents can't afford to help anymore. I've lost everything. Would you be willing to write a letter to the parole board saying you've forgiven me? It would help my case significantly. I understand if you say no. I deserve your anger. But I'm hoping you can find it in your heart to help me, for the sake of the 8 years we spent together. Yours, Trevor. I read the letter twice, then set it down on my desk. My first reaction was disbelief at the audacity. After everything he'd done, he was asking me for help? For forgiveness? For a letter that would help him get out of prison early? My second reaction was laughter. Real, genuine laughter at the absurdity of it all. My assistant knocked on my office door. Everything okay? I heard laughing. Just an amusing piece of mail, I told her, sliding the letter into my desk drawer. Nothing important. That evening, I showed the letter to Julian over dinner at my favorite restaurant. He read it carefully, his expression growing darker with each paragraph. He actually asked you to help him get out of prison early? After stealing from you, cheating on you, and trying to take half of everything you'd built. He did indeed. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said simply. I'm not responding. Not acknowledging it. Not engaging at all. He made his choices. He's facing the consequences. That has nothing to do with me anymore. Julian reached across the table and took my hand. Good. You don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not help, not even a response. Exactly. I've moved on. He's part of my past and that's where he's going to stay. A week later, another letter arrived. This one wasn't from Trevor. It was from Brittany. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope, the same loopy script that had addressed the envelope with divorce papers she'd brought to my door. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. Simone, I don't know if you'll even read this, but I need to try. First, I want to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much coming from me, but it's true. I was young and stupid and selfish. I got involved with a married man and convinced myself it was okay because he told me you guys were basically over anyway. That was a lie and I should have known better. Trevor is in prison now. I'm sure you know that. He's been writing to me too, asking me to help with his parole hearing. He wants me to bring our daughter to show the parole board he has family waiting for him. The truth is, I don't know if she's his daughter. I was seeing someone else at the same time. I never told Trevor that. But now that he's in prison with no money and no prospects, I don't see the point in lying anymore. I'm struggling financially. I have a baby to support, no college degree, and I work 2 jobs just to make rent. My parents help when they can, but they're not wealthy. I heard you're successful now, running some kind of consulting business. I also heard you won a big settlement from Trevor. I know I have no right to ask, but I need money. For the baby. Trevor's daughter or not, I told him she was his, and he should have some responsibility. Since he doesn't have money to help, I'm asking if you'd consider giving me something. A loan or even a gift. Just enough to get stable. I know what we did was wrong. But the baby is innocent. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. Please consider it. Brittany. I set this letter down with less amusement and more anger. The sheer nerve of both of them, contacting me within a week of each other, both asking for money, both playing on guilt and manipulation. This time I called Janet Morrison. They're both contacting you asking for money? Janet's voice was incredulous. After everything? Apparently they both think I'm a bank they can withdraw from. Do not respond to either of them. In fact, I'm going to send cease and desist letters to both. No more contact. If Trevor writes again, it goes to his parole officer as harassment. If Brittany contacts you again, we'll pursue legal action. Thank you. I just can't believe they have the audacity. Criminals and manipulators rarely have self-awareness. They see you as successful and think they're entitled to some of that success. They're not. You owe them nothing. Janet was true to her word. Within a week, both Trevor and Brittany received legal letters ordering them to cease all contact with me. Trevor's letter went to the prison administration. Brittany's went to her last known address. The harassment stopped. No more letters. No more attempts at manipulation. Finally, silence. But the situation reminded me of something important. My success had made me visible, and visibility sometimes attracted people who wanted to take advantage. I needed to protect not just my finances but my peace of mind. I worked with Patricia to set up additional legal protections. A trust that would protect my assets from future claims. An LLC structure for my business that separated personal and business finances completely. Privacy measures that made it harder for people from my past to find me or contact me. You're doing the right thing, Patricia assured me. Success attracts attention and not all of that attention is positive. Protect yourself proactively. Meanwhile, my business continued to grow. We'd expanded our free workshop program thanks to the foundation grant. I'd spoken at 3 more national conferences. The book was nearly finished and scheduled for publication in 6 months. I'd also started mentoring young women interested in finance careers. 3 college students interned at my firm each semester, learning about financial consulting and getting real-world experience. I remembered being young and ambitious with no guidance, and I wanted to provide the mentorship I'd never had. My relationship with Julian continued to deepen. We'd had serious conversations about the future. Not marriage, neither of us was ready for that, but living together, building a life together, supporting each other's dreams. He was designing a community center pro bono, and I was helping fund it as an investment in our neighborhood. You make me want to be better, he told me one evening. More generous, more ambitious, more engaged with the world. That's what real partnership should do. I felt the same about him. He challenged me to think beyond just business success, to consider legacy and impact. Together, we were both growing into better versions of ourselves. One Saturday, I was at the farmer's market when I ran into Greg, Trevor's former colleague who I'd spoken with at the networking event. He waved and came over. Simone, good to see you. How's business? Thriving, thank you. How are you? Good. Actually, I wanted to mention something. Trevor's been writing to people from his old job, asking for letters of support for his parole hearing. He wrote to me. And? I didn't respond. Wanted you to know in case he's harassing other people in your life. The guy has some nerve. He does. But my lawyer shut it down. He's not supposed to contact me anymore. Good. You know, a lot of us felt terrible about what happened to you. We should have seen the signs, should have suspected something was wrong. Maybe if we'd said something, you could have protected yourself sooner. That's kind of you, but you're not responsible for his choices. None of us are. After he left, I reflected on that conversation. Trevor was desperate, reaching out to anyone who might help him. But his desperation wasn't my problem. He'd made his bed. Now he had to lie in it. That night, Julian and I talked about the letters and the attempts at manipulation. How do you really feel about it all? He asked. Under the anger and frustration, what's the core emotion? I thought about it carefully. Pity, actually. Trevor and Brittany are both stuck in the consequences of their bad choices. Meanwhile, I've moved on to something so much better. Their attempts to pull me back into their drama just highlight how far I've come and how little they matter to me now. That's healthy. It took a long time to get here. A year ago, those letters might have upset me more. Might have made me question whether I should help, whether I was being too harsh. But now, I see them clearly. They're manipulators who hurt me and are now facing consequences they don't want to face. That's not my responsibility. I never responded to Trevor's letter. I never acknowledged Brittany's plea for money. I let my silence speak for itself. I'd moved on. I built a new life. And neither of them had any place in it. The parole hearing happened 6 months later without my input. I heard through the grapevine that Trevor's request for early release was denied. He'd serve his full sentence. Brittany apparently didn't show up with the baby either, having decided she wanted no further connection to him. Their plans had fallen apart completely. Their greedy schemes had yielded nothing but consequences and regret. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my book launch, planning a business expansion into 3 new cities, and building a life filled with purpose, community, and genuine happiness. Justice, I realized, didn't always look like dramatic confrontations or revenge plots. Sometimes it looked like living well, succeeding publicly, and letting the people who hurt you fade into insignificant memories while you built something remarkable. That was the justice I chose. And it felt perfect. 2 years after that fateful doorbell ring that changed everything, I stood on stage at the Hartford Convention Center accepting an award. The Community Leadership Award, given annually to a local business owner who'd made significant impact through their work. The room was filled with business leaders, politicians, community organizers. My team was there, proud and beaming. Julian sat in the front row with my mother, both wiping away tears. Roxanne was filming everything on her phone. Simone Reynolds has built something truly special, the presenter was saying. Reynolds Financial Consulting has helped over 300 women protect their finances and rebuild their lives. Through free workshops, community programs, and innovative consulting services, she's changing the landscape of financial literacy for women in our state and beyond. I walked to the podium to applause, the Crystal Award heavy in my hands. I looked out at the audience and thought about how far I'd come. From that devastated woman sitting on her floor holding divorce papers to this moment of public recognition. Thank you, I began. This award isn't just mine. It belongs to every woman who had the courage to take control of her finances. Every woman who left a bad situation. Every woman who learned to protect herself and build a better future. I started Reynolds Financial Consulting because I lived through financial betrayal and wanted to help others avoid or survive that pain. What I discovered in building this business is that women are incredibly resilient, incredibly capable, and incredibly strong. They just need the tools and knowledge to unleash that strength. I talked about our programs, our expansion plans, our impact. But I also got personal, sharing pieces of my story that were now a matter of public record thanks to my book and media interviews. 2 years ago, I discovered my husband had been cheating on me and stealing from me. His mistress came to my door demanding money. I could have let that betrayal destroy me. Instead, I let it remake me. I fought back, protected my assets, and used what I learned to help others. That's what resilience looks like. That's what transformation looks like. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, people lined up to congratulate me, share their own stories, take photos. It was overwhelming and wonderful and validating all at once. My book, Financially Ever After, had been published 3 months earlier and was already in its 3rd printing. It had been featured on morning news shows, recommended by financial experts, and adopted by several universities for their personal finance courses. The success had exceeded every expectation. Reynolds Financial Consulting now had offices in 3 cities. We employed 15 people. We'd helped over 300 women and provided free workshops to thousands more. The foundation had renewed our grant and increased the amount. Other organizations were reaching out for partnerships. I'd been invited to speak at a TEDx conference about financial empowerment. I'd been interviewed for podcasts, magazines, and television shows. My story had resonated with so many people who saw themselves in my experience. But the professional success, while gratifying, wasn't the most important change in my life. The personal transformation was deeper and more meaningful. I'd learned to trust my own judgment again. To recognize red flags. To value myself enough to walk away from anything that didn't serve me. I'd developed boundaries I would never compromise again. My relationship with Julian had become a true partnership. We'd moved in together 6 months ago, combining our lives while maintaining our independence. He supported my business without trying to control it. I encouraged his architectural work without feeling neglected. We were 2 whole people choosing to build a life together, not 2 broken people trying to complete each other. I love that you don't need me, he told me recently. You want me. That's so much better. He was right. This relationship felt nothing like my marriage to Trevor. There was no manipulation, no control, no dishonesty. Just 2 people who respected each other, supported each other's dreams, and genuinely enjoyed being together. I'd also rebuilt my relationship with my extended family. During my marriage, I drifted away from cousins, aunts, uncles. Now I hosted regular family gatherings, reconnected with relatives, built the kind of close-knit family bonds I'd lost. My investment portfolio continued to grow. I now owned 8 rental properties, all generating steady income. My retirement accounts were maxed out every year. I'd started a charitable foundation focused on financial literacy for underserved communities. Grandma Rosa's trust fund had been the seed, but I'd grown it into a financial empire that would last for generations. I visited her grave regularly, updating her on everything I'd built with her gift. "You saved me," I told her headstone on one visit. "Your trust fund gave me the foundation to rebuild my life. Thank you for believing in me enough to leave me that legacy." A few weeks after the award ceremony, I was leaving my office when I saw a familiar figure standing on the sidewalk. "Trevor. You look terrible." Thinner than I remembered, wearing cheap clothes, his face haggard and aged beyond his years. He'd been released from prison 2 months earlier, having served his full sentence. I'd heard he was working at a warehouse, living with his parents, still dealing with probation requirements. He saw me and froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the sidewalk. So much history, so much pain, all condensed into that moment of recognition. "Simone," he said quietly. I took a breath, considering my options. I could ignore him, walk away without acknowledgement. I could confront him, tell him what I thought of his letters and manipulation. Or I could simply be civil and move on. "Trevor," I acknowledged neutrally. I heard about your award. Congratulations. You deserve it." "Thank you." Awkward silence stretched between us. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know my letter was inappropriate. I was desperate and selfish. Again. Some things never change, I guess." "Some things do change," I corrected. "I certainly have. I can see that. You look successful. Happy. I'm glad." "Are you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Glad that I'm happy?" He thought about it. "Honestly, it's complicated. Part of me is glad you weren't destroyed by what I did. Part of me is jealous of your success. And part of me just feels ashamed that I threw away something good for something worthless." "Brittany?" I asked. She finally admitted the kid probably isn't mine. Got a paternity test that proved it. So I destroyed my life for an affair that produced a child that wasn't even mine. The universe has a sense of humor. I felt a flicker of something. Not pity exactly. Just acknowledgement that he was suffering consequences he'd brought on himself. "I need to go," I said. "I have a dinner meeting." "Of course. He trailed off. "I wanted you to know I really am sorry. For all of it. You deserved better than what I gave you." "Yes," I agreed simply. "I did. Goodbye, Trevor." I walked to my car without looking back. I didn't feel angry or vindictive. I didn't feel satisfaction at his obvious struggles. I just felt nothing. He was a stranger to me now, someone I used to know, someone who'd hurt me once but couldn't hurt me anymore. That evening, I met Julian and my team for a celebration dinner. We were toasting the award, the business expansion, and the upcoming second book contract I'd just signed. To Simone, Roxanne raised her glass. The woman who took betrayal and turned it into triumph. To building something meaningful, I countered. To helping others. To community and impact. As we ate and laughed and planned future projects, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. 2 years ago, I'd been sitting on my floor, devastated, holding divorce papers, believing my life was over. I'd been so wrong. My life hadn't ended. It had begun. The real, authentic, powerful life I was meant to live had started the moment I decided to fight back instead of giving up. Trevor and Brittany had shown up at my door with greedy smirks, expecting to take what was mine. Instead, they'd given me the push I needed to become who I was always meant to be. I'd built a business that mattered. I'd created wealth that would last. I'd developed a community of strong women supporting each other. I'd found genuine love with a partner who valued my strength instead of feeling threatened by it. I'd won. Not by destroying them, though they'd done a fine job of that themselves. I'd won by building something so good, so successful, so meaningful that their betrayal became nothing more than a footnote in my origin story. Later that night, back in the home I shared with Julian, I stood by the window looking out at the city lights. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how grateful I am. For all of it. Even the painful parts that led me here. No regrets. No regrets. I mean, I wish I'd learned these lessons a different way. But I can't regret the outcome. I love my life. I love who I've become. I love what I'm building." "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too." We stood there together, looking out at the future, and I felt completely at peace. Trevor was a memory. Brittany was irrelevant. The pain was transformed into purpose. I'd started this journey devastated and defeated. I was ending it victorious and fulfilled. Not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I'd gotten free. Free to be myself, to build my dreams, to live authentically and powerfully. That was the real victory. Not defeating Trevor, but becoming the woman I was always meant to be. Strong, independent, successful, and genuinely happy. 2 years after the worst day of my life, I was living my best life. And that was the sweetest victory of all.